PixMix is brought to you by the Arometa Show, brought to you by Liberated Syndication, twitch.tv/Arometa Show, and is in association with the Old School Lane podcast.
PixMix is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the Arometa Show.
Welcome to PixMix. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, and are you excited for another PixMix film?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since we've had an episode discussing about a Pixar film, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it has been a while, and I think also we're in this kind of weird year again where we're going to get 2 in 1 for this year. So this is going to be the first out of 2 PixMix episodes that we're going to do, and then also we've got a second one that's going to be coming up later on this year.
So. Yeah, and you know, who knows, maybe we even do some of the Pixar shorts, because now that we have the access to Disney Plus, a lot of them have been available to watch. So who knows, maybe we'll even tackle that too.
All hail the Disney Plus.
The Disney Plus is our Lord and Savior.
The all-knowing Oracle. You know, until we say something about the all-knowing Oracle, and then, yeah, I think the Oracle doesn't get too happy with us, but whatever. Cool.
True.
Okay then, so we're ready to get fanciful?
Yes, let us go forth into this epic adventure.
Excelsior!
Okay, we're gone too far. Here we go.
Okay. So Onward is a 2020 American computer-animated urban fantasy film produced by Pixar Animation Studios and Walt Disney Pictures. The film was directed by Dan Scallon, produced by Corey Ray, from a screenplay written by Scallon, Jason Headley, and Keith Burnin. The stars include the voices of Tom Holland, Chris Pratt, Joella Louis-Dreyfus, and Octavia Spencer. Set in a suburban fantasy world, the film allows 2 elf brothers who set out on a quest to find a spell that will bring back their deceased father. And I have to say, well, it was okay in some places. There are some things that there are some niggles that I think do bother me a little bit about this.
Well, yeah, I think that Onward is definitely middle of the road, and from the critiques as well as the box office, it definitely shows. Next to The Good Dinosaur, it's one of the lowest grossing Pixar films.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, I mean, we'll also get to the box office a little later on into the podcast, but I think there are some litigated circumstances, I think we could probably say, to Onward for the reason why it's not doing so well, but we'll address that at the very end of the podcast. But anyway, let's talk about, well, first of all, we always talk about the story in this film. So, so the idea is
well, actually, no, we don't. Before that, we have to talk about the short that came with it.
Actually, I do. Mind you, is it really worth talking about? I mean, it's The Simpsons. I mean, like...
think about it. Like, here's the thing. Last year in Toy Story 4, we got no short. The first time in 25 years that we did not get a Pixar original short. And now the first time in a while that we did get one, it's a Simpsons short. And it's about Maggie, who meets up with this boy, and, you know, she starts falling in love with him, and it kind of plays out like a classic 1940s romance movie. And you know, it takes place in the park, and they kind of like imagine themselves and being like this in romantic situation. And then, you know, Maggie wants to see him again, but then Homer is taking her into various parks that are very dangerous, and she wants to go back to the other park and meet up with the boy. And yeah, I mean, this is very unusual to say the least. And I'm actually curious about how this is going to turn out.
Let me say this. If this short is going to make me watch The Simpsons again, it doesn't, as far as I'm concerned. It just reminds me how poorly written Homer Simpson is now. You know, like, it's just, I just feel like, yeah, there's some clever play in this short, but to me, it's just, I'm just done with The Simpsons. You know, like, it's just, I've not found The Simpsons all that entertaining since Who Shot Mr. Burns. to be honest with you. So, like, you know, for me, like, it was just, it felt like a really bad way to kind of start things. It's like a really poor first date. Like, you know, like, you knew the guy was cute, but then all of a sudden you find out he's a massive cock-up. You know, like, he just can't get anything right on the first go. And then you're kind of like thinking, you know, like, really just need to start us here, like, you know, what's going to happen with the main course, you know? Like, you know, and so, like, yeah, it's a date that's not going too well. I'll safely say this when the Simpsons show came through him. But, you know, we finally get to Onward. And so then, yeah, so do you want to talk about the story first about that? Or?
Yeah, so okay, yeah. So there's a very interesting behind the scenes story about Onward. So Dan Scallion. Now we've already talked about Dan Scallion before because he was the one responsible for Monsters University, and we already tore that movie a new one because, you know, it was a movie that we just felt it was very unnecessary. I mean, we love the original Monsters Inc. We wanted a sequel. We didn't want a prequel, and so there was kind of like this stigma about like, oh man, can he do a good movie? And so apparently from what I've seen in interviews and stuff like that, the story of Onward was based off of his life because you know, he didn't have a father growing up. His father died before he was born, and he had an older brother, and he only experienced his father like until he was like 3 years old. And so he decided to write this story about, you know, two brothers who went to see their father. And Ian is essentially Dan, and Bartley is essentially his older brother. And so he and alongside with two other writers came together and they wrote this script. And we even have some people who are doing the music for this one who are not the familiar Randy Newman or Michael Schisanzo or something like that. But yeah, we have Michael Donna and Jeff Donna who are doing the music. And Brandy Carlisle is the one doing the main theme song of the movie. And so basically, as mentioned in Toy Story 4, that this is basically a new chapter for Pixar. John Lasseter is no longer involved with Pixar. The last thing that he was involved in was Toy Story 4. He left, and well, we don't even know what he's up to. The last time that I heard, he was going to work for this animation company, but now he's not because of his allegations. And so the point is, Pixar is at a new chapter. Pete Docter's the president, and so they're bringing in a bunch of new people involved, and they're working on new projects, and they're going to take a break from their. So this is an opportunity for Dan Scallon to show off his work, and unfortunately, it's middle of the road.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go with the story. So, it's a world that's inhabited by mythical creatures, and that magic was commonplace and was widely respected. However, with technology then going on to the rise, magic became very obsolete and very discarded. So, you know what? I actually kind of like this part of it because, like, you know, it's in a way that, you know, it's kind of like showing the kind of the dangers of what's going to happen if, you know, technology kind of like starts to become a massive thing in people's lives. Like, as you can see, and also you see like the emergence of decades gone by. So, you know, you have wizards and these magicians and everything like that becoming obsolete because now they have a far more convenient thing called technology coming into their lives. And unfortunately, it's sort of kind of like what some of the main elements of Kick-Ass, sorry, not Kick-Ass here, what's that other awful Channel Awesome movie that...
are you talking about the third one?
Yeah, the third one about the stone here and lots of Suburban Nights. There we go. But so it kind of got off to that bit. I didn't really mind that all that too much. You know, I like the idea that there's this. It kind of feels like what we've been kind of talking about, like, you know, the dangers of automation currently going on in society, where a lot of people aren't working these particular manual jobs anymore because they've either got machines or robots or whatever that to kind of like, you know, do the manufacturing or do the cleaning or do everything like, you know, everything that we're talking about. So yeah, in a way, like, Onward kind of like gives some commentary to that, and you can see there that there's going to be a lot of people who are just going to adapt to the idea now that they live this modern life, and but there's also people like one of our protagonists who doesn't want to give up on that stuff and thinks it's really cool and wants to kind of hark back to that. So, you know,
yeah, exactly. And you know, it's actually really fascinating about how this movie presents itself, because this is kind of something that I wanted to see The Good Dinosaur be. Think of the concept of The Good Dinosaur. The meteor missed out on crashing on the Earth. What would happen if they would continue on living? And we saw from the Good Dinosaur that this is a 2013 Earth, and instead it's just like it didn't progress any further. I mean, there was no point into setting it in the modern era. It could have been in prehistoric times, and nothing would have changed. But here, I felt that they took full advantage of what I wanted to see the Good Dinosaur be. It's a mythical world, but it takes place in the modern times, and they're embracing modern technology. And we have once again another timid character who becomes brave at the end. Ian is essentially what I wanted Arlo to be. You know, a character who goes through being incredibly frightened, but then he starts becoming more brave as the movie progresses. And my God, I mean, Onward is everything that I wanted the Good Dinosaur to be.
Yeah, but mind you, I think we can obviously say that, and obviously as we go through the story, we'll talk about the elements between our two main characters. But I mean, yeah, but the other thing about the Good Dinosaur as well was that everything in Onward. Wouldn't you say everything in that world belonged in that world? You know,
Absolutely,
if you,
yes.
As in the Good Dinosaur, like the way the settings and the way that they created the atmosphere, all of that was beautiful. But our main characters are still cartoon characters. You know, like, it's one of these things is not like the other thing, like there was this big contrast between, what you were looking at in the background and what you were looking at as the animation was going on. Here in Onward, that doesn't suffer from that. Everything here belongs,
Yes, it does.
So,
like everything makes sense. You have the school, you have the highways, you have the big open world, you have the Manticore's lair. I mean, everything fits so well. Everything matches. The personalities match as well. You have people who are police officers, teachers, students. All of those, they match perfectly. And it is not, you have the characters from the Good Dinosaur, but you don't really remember them. They just come and go really quickly. And Onward kind of suffers through this as well, but at least you remember some of the characters. Well, as for Good Dinosaur, I don't remember any of them.
Yeah, like, I remember Ian and Barley, and definitely, Laurel as well, it's, the main characters actually do stick with you. And that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember the Manticore. I remember the mom. I remember Officer Bronco. So I do remember some of the characters, as opposed to like the Good Dinosaur, in which there was Arlo, Spot, the dad who was there for like a few minutes, and then he dies, and then that's it.
Yeah. So, in regards, but going back to the story, so the idea is that magic is no longer a thing, and that the modern day conveniences of modern living have now basically taken over, and so then we're introduced to the family, which is obviously made up of Ian, who is the smaller younger brother of Barley, and then their mother Laurel, and obviously they suffered a recent tragedy of their father passing away. So there's then after so you get to see some of the school life of what Ian goes through. Like, he's trying to wash away some of his awkwardness that he feels like he's gone through, and so he makes himself a list of everything that he wants to do and how he wants to kind of progress forward. But unfortunately, he can't nail any of them, and then he finally gets to the point of asking people to his birthday party. But obviously, then that's ruined by Barley.
Yeah, where he shows up with his van Guinevere.
And so, you know what? I'm kind of confused. How on earth did he afford to get that van? To be honest with you, are those things kind of pricey?
I mean, to be fair, it looks kind of run down and junky. He probably got it like some junkyard somewhere, and then he decided, I must take on the quest to put this, van together, and I shall dub it Guinevere. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a run-down van that you would see in a junkyard, and then, he probably just put his skills together to fix it, and then he customized it, and there we go. There's the van for you.
Yeah. So he comes in. He obviously sounds like, he embarrasses his little brother as much as he possibly can. And I tell you what, they did such a good job of it as well. And to the point where there was one point where I felt like they kind of went a bit too far about it, and that was when he opened the glove box and he's got loads of parking violations in there, and it's that sort of made me feel a bit unlikable to him. It's kind of like when they went overboard, with the liar scene when obviously Jim Carrey can't tell a lie to the police officer, and he has to admit that he's got loads of parking tickets in his glove box. and things like that.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
yeah, and it kind of makes it feel a bit unlikable like that. It's like, I was looking at all those tickets. I was thinking, you're not got a warrant out for your arrest. Like, and then here's, here's Sergeant, what's his face, Centaur
You mean,
here,
yeah, oh yeah, Officer
Only
Bronco.
Bromley, yeah, and I was thinking, oh hey, well, it looks like they're going to come to some kind of loggerheads. So I'll say they haven't come to loggerheads already from the looks of it, because obviously it looks like a very awkward thing that's happening though between those two. But so there's all of that, and then obviously we get to the point where they Ian turns 16, so he gets to be given this gift from their father when they turn 16, and it obviously turns out to be a magical staff. And written
Yeah.
on the staff is the possibility of him being brought back to life for about a day. So they go ahead to try and do the spell. Obviously, they can't do it, and so, well, to be fair, Barley tries to do the spell and he can't do it, and so he just gives up. So Ian then tries to do the spell after going to bed for a while, and then all of a sudden is able to actually do it. And they find out that he actually has wizard powers. So they bring half of him back to life, and he's only just legs just walking around. It's not really like, I think they were kind of trying to play it as much for laughs as they could, in the beginning, but I don't know, it just looks really kind of awkward, really. And and also
Yes,
know that as
it's
well,
awkward, but I mean, true, it is very awkward, but I think that they were able to play some very smart things with the limitations. Like, for example, the game that Barley used to play with his dad, where he would tap his foot, and then the scene later on where they're dancing, and we learn that he's a terrible dancer, and that they can somewhat communicate with him, even though that he has a lower half. And then they were able to try to create an upper half with him just slouching around. I mean, I think that they were trying to kind of tease the audience and saying oh, you want to see him fully, well, there's the lower half. If you want to see the upper half, then they better get the gem and complete the spell. Otherwise, he'll disappear forever within 24 hours.
Yeah, but it's I kind of feel bad watching the trailer, because if I hadn't watched the trailer, I think that would have been kind of a bit spoiled for me. The trailer kind of spoiled that bit for me, really. So when I saw it, it was like, oh yeah, we know what's going to happen, but I would have been sort of kind of surprised as to when they actually did it, but obviously
that's fair. I mean, at least they actually showed you what was going to be, as opposed to Brave, in which there was no indication that Merida's mother was going to turn into a
he's turning into a bear. But I mean, to me, I just feel like I feel like the trailer probably gave away too much, I think. So obviously the impact of that just kind of took it away. So,
okay, that's fair.
Yeah. So obviously they go off on this adventure, and so they go off, and this is the thing though, it's kind of oh, Shrek and Donkey on a whirlwind adventure. I love it, but obviously they've only got so much time to kind of do it all in, I guess. But I don't know why, it just some of it kind of felt a little bit underwhelming, a little bit. Obviously they got the Pixies, who are now these biker gangs who have never used their wings before and stuff like that, and then obviously they meet up with the Manticore, who is now running kind of a Chuck E. Cheese kind of deal a little bit, or some kind of family friendly restaurant or something like that. So then it's the Manticore kind of when her coming out of her shell pretty much and becoming herself again. Obviously that's quite kind of cool to watch, but I don't know, I felt like the kind of the pixie thing, I just felt like it was just kind of I mean, was there really anything kind of done in that scene? Really?
Not really.
Achieved,
I mean,
really?
not really. I mean, I guess it's the closest thing to a somewhat antagonist, because, I mean, they were the only threats. There's not really a villain in this movie other than the time that Ian and Barley have with their dad. So, essentially, the Pixies were the only bit of threat in the movie. I mean, I guess you could say that maybe Officer Bronco was a little bit, preventing them from going any further because, their journey is warring their mother. And, she realizes that if they pursue in retrieving the gem, that a curse will be unleashed. And so that's why she decides
Yeah,
to.
but in defense of Bronco, though, like he wasn't stopping them out of any malicious intent. Like for in regards to what he was doing, he was basically just doing what he thought naturally as a police officer would, or like someone who is believes that he's in so in a caring role or something like that. So
I felt that his character should have been a lot stronger. Not only is he a police officer, but he's also their stepdad. So I felt that maybe there should have been a
well,
scene
it was kind of insinuated that it was his boyfriend. That he was the boyfriend of the mother. So like, I don't think he was kind of like in that role yet. So like,
no, but we know that he was going to be at some point. I would have liked a scene in which when maybe Ian and Barley would have like talked to him and saying like, you're our mother's boyfriend, but you're not our dad. Don't tell us what to do or something like that. And it's even more difficult because he's a police officer.
I bet you, like most Pixar films, it was cut for time. Like, it's like you gotta stick with the main stuff. And, anyway, Bronco wasn't really that major, a character, major of a story arc, really. Like, it's just the everything else that.
But he should have been.
Well,
I think that was an opportunity wasted. It's like you have Ian and Barley don't remember their dad very much. And Officer Bronco probably was there maybe for a bit, maybe for like a year or so. Maybe they've known about him for a while. So, I mean, I know that throughout the movie, they don't like him. So maybe this could have been an interesting opportunity. It's like, the transition between like their real biological father that they're trying to resurrect to life for one day, and then the man who's been a part of, their mother's lives.
Yeah,
so
to be fair, though, like, I mean, keeping this in mind as well, like, I think Onward actually went on for about 103 minutes. I think this is actually one of their longer Pixar films, I think. Usually
that's true. And I guess the main focus was about the brothers.
Yeah.
So I guess they probably couldn't like squeeze everything because there were a lot of characters I really wanted to know a lot more of. I wanted to know a lot more about the mother. I wanted to know a lot more about the Manticore. I wanted to know more about the legend. I wanted to, know more about the father from the little memories that they were able to get. We did get that, though. I mean, that scene that Barley talked about where, the last time that he saw his father, he was attached to tubes and he couldn't say goodbye to him. That was heart-wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, more scenes like that, please.
Yeah, but, you got to keep this in mind, like, if they probably put that in, I guarantee you, it probably would have expended the movie to, like, 120 minutes. Like, 2 hour. I mean, I love Pixar, but for, like, to put 2 hours worth of movie in there, like, it's like, that's a little bit much, I would have thought. But,
okay, that's fair enough. I think that, excuse me. I think that the time could have been rearranged a little bit better.
Maybe so. But
anyway, but yeah, I think that for the most part, there are a lot of really humorous scenes in there, like when Ian is trying to get into his magic and Barley is, acting like your stereotypical Dungeons and Dragons player where he's talking in, ancient tongue and he's knows a lot about the lore and the magic and all that stuff, except that it's actually real. And the whole subplot about like going into the Raven's Point and having to go into a path that's not straightforward. And I
guarantee you, so stuff like that, him speaking in tongues and like doing all this stuff and all this magic and everything like that. I guarantee that's probably the reason why he's been banned in some Middle Eastern countries. Like, and lest we forget about the other scene, if you're I remember that. And there's a scene in where we have a lesbian cop, and there's a scene where she says that my girlfriend's daughter is also acting up as well. So obviously that also kind of like gave which I'm really surprised at. Really, like you would have thought. I mean, hats off to Pixar for not editing that out for like other foreign audiences and keeping that together. By the way, Pixar is notorious for regionalizing their films now. So like for them to keep that in and to say, well, sorry, that's just the way it is. And then you obviously lose some of their markets because of that. Kudos to Pixar for doing that. to be
Yeah,
honest.
but that also could be partly the reason why it's becoming one of the lowest grossing movies out there because the movie is banned in some countries.
Yeah, but let's face it. It's I'm glad that it's being. It would. But I guarantee you this: if a Pixar film was low on take on one box office, I would rather it be low take on good principles rather than bad ones. As far as I'm
Very
concerned,
true.
like, so that's that in a way you can't really kind of like blame Pixar for kind of like taking away from that. But that's just me. But
That's true, and I'm glad that they were able to take that risk. And once again, Disney is praising this character. It's like, oh, look at that, we have the first gay couple who came out. It's like, no, it's not.
not.
First of all, no. First of all, we had that character from Frozen, and then we had LeFou from the Beauty and the Beast live action movie. So no, this isn't the first gay.
Yeah, and so like I wouldn't say that this is any type of like massive progression. Obviously, this is kind of like just should be the norm now.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
So anyway, so let's continue on. So
So we got to the Manticore, and so then
Yeah.
we get to the point where they obviously are now going to be. I think they're being chased by the police now because So and
they're being chased by the police because they've reached over to the Ravens Point and they're really close into getting to their location, but the cops are surrounding them, and so they need to drive away. And Ian is not able to perform the strongest magic attack, which is shooting out lightning, because he needs to combine focus and confidence and all that kind of stuff. He's not able to do it yet. So what Barley decides to do is that he decides to sacrifice Guinevere so that the rocks can fall down and will block the path from the police so that they can continue on with their journey.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because after that scene, I mean, like the police officers aren't in a position. Obviously they have the bit where they see them walking off into the distance, and I'm just sitting there like, they're not that far away. You could just get down and chase after them. But
yeah, I mean, I know they made a joke about it earlier in the movie. Centaurs are known for running really, really fast. And then Officer Bronco was like, oh, but why would I do that? I have a car. So I guess this is supposed to be like commentary about like they are capable of running after Ian and Barley, but they just choose not to because they're incapable of doing anything without their cars.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of like a line. So they need a line like saying, shouldn't we just like run after them? It's kind of like then they just say, oh no, we can't because we don't have cars. And they just have it like that. And then maybe have that as like, Broncos go. Because, keep in mind, we've had a theme where, we've had the Magna-Core, come out of her, go back to her natural roots. We've had the Pixies then start to fly again after losing their motorcycles. And then, why not have it where, Bronco decides, oh, hey, well, I can't chase after these kids because I don't have my car anymore. And then basically he has his moment of, trying to run again.
Yeah, I mean, like we got that briefly at the end, but yeah, that should have happened. Actually, that would have been nice if we would have had a scene in which they would have chased after them. It's like, hey, look, I can run really fast now. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a struggle with it at first, but then he finds his strength to keep running.
Yeah. So so we get to the point where they go to the they follow the Ravens, and then they go towards this tomb, I guess, and then they go for all these dangerous tracks, and then
which is pretty stereotypical, to be quite honest. It's like, oh, we're in a cave, and if you step on it, booby traps will come out, and there's this huge river that leads towards the end of the road and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the scene in which they need to, push a rock, otherwise they'll be drowning. And, you see that kind of stuff in like Indiana Jones movies, the booby traps and all that stuff. And they need to work together to, find out how to solve it right before they get killed off. But the twist that I did not expect was when they reach toward the end of the tunnel and then they climb out and they just so happen to go back right in front of the high school where it all started. I actually did not expect to see that.
Yeah, and so that was kind of weird though, because it's kind of like, well, how does that all make sort of the sense? Did they just kind of like loop around in some way, or like did?
I guess so. I guess they did loop around. I guess once they reached over to Raven's Point, that river that led them over to their destination was taking
okay then forget what I said. Like maybe the river journey was a lot longer than I thought, maybe. And
I mean, it was essentially, if you remember, the journey was essentially a montage of practicing his magic which was very important that we would see later on when he takes on the rock dragon.
Okay, so they get back to the school, and so Ian thinks that Bailey said, Barley's taking him on a wild goose chase, and so he takes the legs and walks off, and then opens his notebook again, and he's got the notes out of all the things he ever wanted to do with his dad, and he starts crossing them all out, but then realizes that some of the stuff that he's actually done with Barley. And then he then starts flashing back to all the... And here's the thing about this as well. Like, he starts flashing back to, like, all the moments in his childhood and things like that. But, I mean, did they make any indication of that, like, at the very beginning of the movie? Of, like, that they had all these... They had all these, like, experiences?
No, not really.
No.
I mean, throughout the movie, that the only thing that was on Ian's mind was that he never had a... And, we did see throughout the movie that, the brothers did have a good relationship with each other. But, he was, like, embarrassed with him. If you remember the scene in which when, he disguises himself as Officer Bronco, and then he starts, revealing the truth that he thinks that Barley is a screw-up. It's like, since when did he come from thinking he was a screw-up to now, realizing that he was the father he never had? Yeah,
that in itself is really confusing. But on top of that as well, like, I felt like it took away, like, the impact of, like, when he, like, ticked off that last box, because that should be the moment where people start kind of, like, tearing up in a Pixar film. And to me, it was just kind of like, I never felt so dried-eyed in a Pixar film in all my life, to be honest with you. Like, it was a touching moment. I'm not going to take anything away from that, but, I mean, keep this in mind. Like, we'd seen previously, remember in Finding Dory, when she finally found her parents, that was an emotional moment, because we've been building up all of that all the way to that point. And so, that in itself was an emotional moment. Inside Out was an emotional moment because we were building up to Riley, tearing her eyes out over being sad about having to move away from that, from her, basically her life, and, coming to the end of her crisis, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we felt the same way about Coco when Miguel went back into the human world, and, he starts singing to Coco because she's starting to forget about...
So forgetting about her father, yeah, exactly. So, and we were building up to that as we were going along, and so we found, and also we were introduced to the song at the very beginning of the thing. So elements of what we're building up to, we introduce at the very beginning of the movie. Onward fails to do that, in my opinion. I think.
Yeah, I mean, even Toy Story 4 was able to give us an emotional moment with Gabby, and with, Woody saying goodbye to Buzz and the rest of the toys because he decides to stay behind with Bo Peep as a lost toy.
Well, that's because, I mean, you and I, Patricia, have been subjected to, like, 3 other Toy Story movies before this one, so of course for us it was going to be an emotional moment. For the neutral public, I'm not entirely sure, but,
Okay, fair enough,
yeah, but, in the standalone movies, though, like all the other, Inside Out, Finding Dory, like, okay, Finding Dory is a sequel to Finding Nemo, but what?
Yeah. I mean, but like Inside Out, Coco.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, the rest of them were sequels, to be fair. But those 2 movies, and over in the past decade, were able to bring out so much emotion and so much impact that it was able to be just as important and just as memorable as some of the sequels to movies that we grew up with.
Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, Onward fails to it hints towards it. I can see it there, but I just feel I can't get emotionally involved in it because I feel like I've been brought into it a bit too late, I think. So
yeah, and those who are saying, oh, you guys have been spoiled with all the other amazing Pixar movies that had came out previously, you're being too harsh on it. It's like, as we mentioned earlier, Pixar has a very high standard for what we expect in an animated movie. I mean, more so than DreamWorks, more so than Blue Sky Studios, more so than Illumination. I mean, when it comes to, Pixar itself, we expect them to give us an original story that's going to hit us in the emotional field. And the fact that Onward didn't do that really felt more like a disappointment.
Mm-hmm. So, we get to the point where, obviously, sorry, I was going blank there. Ian then goes back, and then
Ian goes back, and
then realizes that Barley has actually summoned the stone dragon, and so that's
and it is essentially like a throwaway scene because you have you know, him trying to protect a fountain that is like one of the last of the classic fountains from the ancient times that he doesn't want to tear down, and that just so happens to be where the gem was.
So, I mean, obviously you can blame him for that. Really, he was just basically protesting because he thought, oh, hey, it's you know, it's part of our history and things like that. So, like, he didn't even realize the stone was in there. But
No, he didn't at all. And then finally, when it was summoned, then the rock dragon comes along, and you know, the Manticore and Laurel came by, and they have the sword, and so they have to jam the sword inside of its heart. That way, it can be able to become destroyed. And you know, Ian is, you know, doing his magic abilities. He has a lot more confidence with it now, and you know, he's able to resurrect the father just in time for Barley to, you know, say his final goodbyes. And you know, we see Ian from a distance looking through it, and you know, he asks Barley, you know, what did he say? And he was like, oh, you know, father told me that, you know, this would have been his wizard name, and it sounds stupid, and you know, he's really proud of the man that you become, and he told me to give you this. He gave him a hug, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, but I mean, how impactful was it that Barley ended up kind of being the father figure to Ian all this time?
If they would have built it up a little bit more, I would have been really touched with it. Like throughout the movie, I mean, Barley was built up as the screw up, as this, oh, look at this Dungeons and Dragons dork. He's, you know, taking this way too seriously. It's like, I know that he was like really confident with Ian. You know, he was the one who taught him all the magic, and he was by his side and giving him all the confidence. Like, you know, that part is true, but you know, the buildup of him being like the second father to him, I didn't really see it. I just saw him as like a brother, not a second father.
So, yeah, that's pretty much the movie. Pretty much. I mean, everyone obviously. I mean, obviously, Ian continues using his magic, and everyone else kind of just continues being themselves, really. So, except they've realized that they need some magic in their lives, and so. What message?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because in a few months, Sony is going to be releasing their next movie, and it's going to be called Connected, and it's supposed to be the story about a father who, you know, his daughter that he raised and he protected and all that kind of stuff, and she's obsessed with technology, and the entire family is obsessed with technology, and so they decide to go on a road trip without technology, without cell phones and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden robots start taking over. So
okay, I guess so isn't that didn't Robin Williams try and do that with RV? I mean, wasn't that the
yeah. Exactly. And here's the thing, like, I was excited for this movie because, you know, it was done by the same people who did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Spider-Man and Enter the Spider-Verse. It was done by Lord and Miller. So I was excited by this. But then the whole robots thing kind of just took me off, and now I'm kind of hesitating on how this movie's going to turn out.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, I mean, again, I think in regards to the movie, like, trope of, like, oh, modern technology has taken over and we need to go back to the good old days, like, I think maybe I would definitely say maybe Onward's probably got a bit more on Connected, I think, but obviously we're not seeing Connected yet, so we don't know. And as far as
and we're probably not going to see it anytime soon because it's a Sony film, and it's also, and it's probably going to be delayed because of you know what. So
anyway,
so
I think well, actually, tell you what, while we're on the subject of you know what, I think maybe we should probably talk about the box office take-in for this at the minute. So the latest Onward box office that I got from this, and tell you what, I'm going to try and bring up a more recent one than the one I'm currently looking at the minute. So right now it's doing, from what I can see, at about oh dear. Well, domestically, it's doing about $39 million at the box office. However, its worldwide box office figures is about $81.5 million. So it's...
oh, man, that really sucks.
I know,
the movie took over $100 million to make.
Well, they're quoting actually 100 to 200 million, actually. So it could even be worse than that. But here's the thing about this. Onward can't be blamed for this, and let me explain why. As of this date of this podcast, we're currently in the middle of a health crisis at the minute across the world. We're currently experiencing the coronavirus, which is a respiratory disease which has killed thousands of people across the planet and many people in China. So what's happened is that a lot of the countries now are locking down public areas. They're not letting people go to cinemas. So what do you put, and to theaters as well? So what do you think is going to happen to movies that are currently going onto the screens right now, with people currently fearing a public health crisis at the minute? No one's going out to watch it, and unfortunately, that's what's going on. I mean, I would probably argue that maybe Pixar should probably Disney Pixar should probably re-release it Onward maybe next year. Maybe,
Yeah,
and say,
for sure.
just say, oh hey, we're gonna add a few more bits and pieces to it. Maybe we'll throw in a Frozen short, maybe just to get people to come in, and maybe I just say and that's what I'm more worried about. Also with Soul as well, that's gonna come out in June. That's gonna be our second one. I mean, is that gonna make even less money? Is that gonna make 40 million worldwide?
Yeah, and you know what's going to happen, right? You know, Pixar and Disney are going to think, oh, the reason why nobody is watching this is because it's an original idea. Nobody wants to watch this, and now they're going to go back to sequels. That's going to really piss me off if that was the case.
No, I tell you, if they're thinking that, then really, really stupid. It's like, yeah, I would say to any Pixar executive that's thinking that, no, nobody wants to put their life on the line to watch your movie. Okay, like, there's a lot of diehard Disney Pixar fans out there, but that's one line they're not gonna cross. You know?
Yeah,
so, like,
for sure.
yeah, so my advice to Disney, if they're not happy with the current release mechanism, with the current release period of Onward, it's like, you can't fault this movie, you can't fault everything that's going on with this movie. I would say re-release it next year. When you've obviously got things chance to settle down, and then give it another release. And that's one thing about Soul as well. Like, if you know it's not going to do well, don't release it. Release it next year or release it some other time when you know that a lot of people are going to go out to go watch movies again. Everyone's going to be streaming stuff for the foreseeable future, pretty much now. So, like,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, why do you think they're releasing Frozen 2 and Rise of the Skywalker 3 weeks early? Because they know that they're going to be staying in as opposed to going out to the theater. So, yeah, I think that if they are going to, you know, do that for their future Disney movies, it's like, hey, you know, release Onward on Disney Plus, or, you know, re-release it when, you know, this whole epidemic is over. So, yeah, I think that for the most part, you know, it's really sad to see Onward failing. And it's not because, oh, you know, it wasn't a good movie, and it's not failing, oh, because we don't want to see original projects. No, it's because of this, you know, pandemic. And I think that with the fact that people are not seeing it, it's really sad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, actually, there was also another thing about this as well, and that this film was also banned in Arab countries like Kuwait, Iran, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, as one of the female police officers called Spectre indicates that she's a lesbian in this. And funnily enough, it's like you know, it's obviously those names probably won't surprise many people, though Kuwait does not criminalize female homosexual acts. So why they banned it is quite strange, to be quite honest with you. But the film has been screened in Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Lebanon, and Egypt. And however, apparently, I'll tell you what, actually, I can take back what I said. Apparently, according to this, in the Russian version of the movie, apparently because of the gay propaganda law, quote unquote, the Disney Russian version of Onward, apparently they redubbed the character to not say those lines. So, yeah, so apparently Russia, that's how they got around doing that, but, yeah. Okay, so I think we should give some scores out. So, Patricia, are you ready to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, then, so, I mean, it is a middle-of-the-road Pixar film. It's nothing, unfortunately, spectacular. However, I can't say that there's no good elements to it, so I think 7 is probably a good score for it.
Yeah, I'm going to say 7 as well. I mean, you know, let's talk about the other movies that we gave scores. I would say, like, Up, WALL-E, A Bug's Life. So, yeah, I mean, like, out of all of those, I mean, like, all of those other movies, I think, you know, they have good elements in there too. Like, for example, Up has that fantastic 10-minute intro. WALL-E has the first half where it was practically flawless with its, you know, beautiful presentation of WALL-E and Eve falling in love with each other. A Bug's Life, I mean, like, you know, the circus bugs were a lot of fun, and Hopper was a good villain. And, you know, with Onward, we have, you know, the dynamic between the two brothers. We have the interesting premise of the fantasy world. And also, you know, it tries itself really hard to have a genuine, heartfelt relationship with the father, even though we only see like his lower half. So, you know, there are some good things in it. About whether, you know, I would, you know, how highly I would rank up Onward compared to, you know, Up or Wally or A Bug's Life. That's kind of hard to say. I need to probably sit with this one a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So, that concludes another episode of PixMix until we finally come to Seoul. So,
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so thank you very much for everyone for tuning in to another episode of PixMix. My name's been Aaron.
My name's been Patricia.
Take care, and bye for now.
See you later.